Hey everyone, it's Dave Davlin and welcome to episode 8 of What's Your Handicap, the final episode. And today I'm going to answer a question I'm sure that a lot of you have been asking yourself. Mr. Davlin, what makes you the expert? In the past 7 videos I've talked about handicaps, and I've talked about moving on past your handicaps, using your handicaps in a positive way in your life to affect other people's lives. So you probably asked yourself along the way, well, who is this guy and does he have expertise in this? Well, what's the deal? Is he a doctor? Have you studied this? Well, the answer to all of that would be no. I'm no doctor. I haven't studied this, at least on a formal level. But what I am is a person who, just like many of you, has suffered with a handicap. You see, throughout my entire life, I've suffered with two things: social anxiety and inferiority complex. I'm not sure if it stems from my stepfather, who was an alcoholic, or maybe my father leaving me when I was young, but it's very real in my life, and I've struggled and struggled to overcome it, but I never have. Now, a lot of you struggle with something like that, and you're thinking to yourself, well, you know, Dave, you get up in front of thousands of people every year and you speak. How did you possibly overcome this handicap? Well, to answer that question, it's very simple. I didn't overcome it. I still struggle with it today like I always have. My wife will tell you I'm great in front of an audience of 1,000 people, but if I get in a social situation, it's very hard for me. I go to a very large church in San Antonio, 25,000 members, and we have about 5 services, and so one service may have 5,000 people. And I can be there and they ask you to get up and shake hands or talk about yourself or maybe even sing, and sometimes I'll break out into a cold sweat for no reason, to a point where I've had to leave before. See, I still struggle with this like I always have, but I made a decision a long time ago that my calling in life was to affect other people's lives, whether it be through entertainment or speaking or writing, and nothing was going to stand in my way, not even my handicap of social anxiety and inferiority complex. The same thing is true with you. You may struggle with something, you may never overcome it, but it doesn't have to handicap you for the rest of your life. Your handicap does not have to handicap you. One of my favorite movies of all time came out in 1985, and it starred Michael J. Fox, and it was called Back to the Future. Michael J. Fox played the part of Marty McFly. He was a very troubled teenager. He hated his life. His father was a nerd, his mother had a drinking problem, his sister couldn't get a date to save her life, and his older brother still lives at home and takes the bus to work at a local fast food restaurant. He hates his life. And even more, he's got this girl he loves, but he has a special date he's been planning for months. And now he can't even take his girl out on a date because the bully who's been bullying his dad since high school wrecks the family's only car, and now he has no transportation. He hates his life. But through some circumstances that take place, he gets cast back in time to the year 1955, 30 years earlier. And while he's there, he runs into his parents. But they don't know it's their future son. They think it's just a kid from school. So he begins to influence the way they think about life, about themselves, and about the future. And then he gets cast back to 1985, and he wakes up one morning, and he thinks it's all been a dream. So he walks into the living room of his house, he looks around, and it's decorated, and it's beautiful. It didn't look like it did when he left. And he looks at the kitchen table, and his sister's there, and she's getting so many calls for dates, she can't keep track of all of them. And his brother's wearing this nice suit. And he goes, "Why are you wearing a suit?" He goes, "Well, I always wear a suit to the office." Then the front door opens, his dad walks in. He's this cool guy, he's a published author. And the mom comes in behind him, and she's carrying a tennis racket, and she's young and she's thin. Then he goes out to the garage, opens the garage door, and there, right in front of him, is this 4x4 pickup he's always dreamed about. He always said, someday, someday. Well, someday has arrived, and now the truck is his. His life is everything he wanted it to be because he made some different decisions 30 years earlier in 1955. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Dave, you can't go back in time. That's absolutely true. But see, you can change the future. Today is your 1955. And the decisions you make today, not only for yourself, but for those behind you, will affect the next 5, 10, 20, and even 30 years. This is your 1955. What your life will be like in 1985 will depend on the decisions that you make today. One of my other favorite movies was called Wonder. It came out recently. And in the movie, this little boy had to have all these facial surgeries. And at one point, he's crying because all the kids at school are making fun of him. He turns to his mom. He says, "Mom, I hate the way I look. I hate these lines on my face." And she said, "Hey, we all have lines on our face. It's the roadmap that tells us where we've been." Just like me, you watching this, you have lines in your face. It's the roadmap to tell you where you've been. And maybe you haven't liked that. Maybe your handicap has stopped you, but it doesn't have to do so anymore. This is your 1955. Change your life today by making some different distinctions, different decisions. Make a different 1985 and let it start today. Let the new lines on your face be lines of joy, lines of encouragement, lines of laughter, lines of love. You know, I couldn't end this video series, What's Your Handicap, without talking about this person. To me, this is the person who is the epitome of learning to move past your handicap and not letting it stop you. Helen Keller was a brilliant human being. She was born in 1880 in Alabama and she died in 1968. And although a childhood illness left her blind and deaf from the age of 2, she became an author, she became a lecturer, and she became an American legend. The struggles that she endured to achieve success, they can be an inspiration to all of us. She said a lot of wonderful things throughout her lifetime, but the greatest words Helen Keller ever spoke came in this simple phrase: life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. Although those profound words were spoken many years ago, the truth they convey still lives on. Life only gives us those two choices, and it forces us to choose one. It's our greatest privilege. It's our greatest responsibility. Knowing you have those two choices, what choice will you make? It's easy to choose the nothing at all, just be handicapped by your handicaps and let life just give you whatever it wants to. Or you can make the choice for the daring adventure, but for many of you, it's going to be that you have to quit letting the handicap you. You've got to move on past it and through it. I hope you'll choose the daring adventure, just like Helen Keller did. So the takeaway today is this: not words of wisdom, not a famous quote, simply a poem I wrote called What's Your Handicap? As you journey on the train of life you have chosen, 2 riders occupy your chair. And when your voyage ends and the tracks run out, each one is sure to be there. Both are carriers of the good and the bad and will accompany you to the end. One is the person that you became, and the other who you could have been. One proclaims life was too hard and fear kept my dreams at bay. The other proclaims I too was afraid, but I did it anyway. One declares life wasn't fair and at times I felt all alone. The other declares I too was lonely, but still I continued on. For life in its irony gives us strength and frailty over which we have no command. It deals us the cards but leaves us the choice of how we will play out our hand. We can use our hardships, mistakes, and inadequacies to forge out a path of defeat, or we can continue on in spite of them and use them to help people we meet. So the question is not, do you have a handicap? For as humans, we all do. The question is, what is your handicap? And is your handicap handicapping you? Until next time, one life, one shot. Make it count.